Good morning once again and welcome back. Today, our first roundtable is Islamic Finance and Impact Investing, collaborating to form more financial inclusion through inclusive business model. Our keynote speaker is Farido Kehkov, former ambassador of Canada to Pakistan, Indonesia, and Egypt. May I please have you on the stage? Also, our moderator today is Melik Shah Utku, Assistant General Manager Al Baraka Turk, Mr. Murat Ulu, Group President, Financial Affairs, member of the Executive Board, Ağoğlu Group of Companies, Ms. Heather Grady, Vice President, Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, Mr. Alberto Brugnori, Founder Asaif, former Director, and Mr. Jumatun Azmi, Founder, President, Kasar Group of Companies. May I please ask you to have a seat on stage? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be the opening show on the second day of a conference because it's what I call the trickling down or the trickling in moment. I'm absolutely grateful for the invitation, which was somewhat sudden, but I have been very admirative of the speech given yesterday by His Highness Prince Turki. And I'm a bit jealous because you recall he said, I'm Saudi, but my name is Turkey, and everybody applauded. So I decided to have my own take on it because I'm a retired Canadian diplomat, but in 1848, one of my ancestors with the same name was sent to Turkey or to the Sublime Door as ambassador of Belgium, and he endeared himself so much that 4 years later, the Sublime Door sent him as the Turkish ambassador to Belgium. That is multilateral diplomacy for you. And eventually, he was also sent as ambassador to Spain for the Sublime Door. So I presume that diplomacy is in my blood. I've been asked to give a few introductory comments on this panel, and I'm certainly not an expert on Islamic finance, but I have been exposed to Islamic finance thanks to my various posting in Muslim countries, Iran, Pakistan, Indonesia, Egypt, and I've had extensive stays in Tunisia and repeated visit to Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, where I actually witnessed the rebirth, as it were, of Islam re-emerging from Soviet society. But I also want to underline a very basic premise of mine, and it might surprise you, but that men are men, which means that however beautifully inspired Islamic banking may be, it is not immune to distortion, and I think that's why it might be useful to recall some of the basics. My first comment is that in the West, very few people actually understand Islamic finance, despite all the efforts made so far, or maybe not enough. Or maybe that in this day and age of Donald Trump style of Islamophobia, it may be the results of a deliberate refusal to understand Islamic finance or an unwillingness to learn, or maybe all of the above. And at best, those who actually think they know, horrified that something might destroy centuries of usury capitalism, tend to limit themselves in understanding Islamic finance to the concept of interest-free credit or loans. I need not to go into lengthy definition in front of an audience like this with the expert luminaries in the room and particularly on the panel, but very simply, the concept of not paying or receiving interest is the base of the structure, and only that, however noble and beautiful. And to understand that structure, and that's the big if, to understand that structure, you actually need to understand Islam, or as deeply, Islam economics. And I have always regretted that this expression of Islamic economics has not been used very often. And it has nothing to do, by the way, with how George Bush, the father, used to characterize Reaganomics as voodoo economics. No, it is based on fundamental sense and principle of justice, and it covers a whole range of what you would call life attitudes, like the rights and obligation of the individual, the distribution of wealth, the sharing of risk, one of the most critical part of Islamic finance, property rights as well, and the sanctity or the respect of contracts. So in fact, it is quite complicated. In fact, it's certainly as complicated as the conventional system, but with less swindling or scheme, or at least you hope. I think that Islamic finance has always been narrowed down to banking, but it is much more than just banking. It covers financial intermediation, and it has its own regulatory framework. It is a complete system, maybe perfectly parallel to the non-Islamic financial system. Thus, it includes capital formation, capital markets, and of course, insurance. And even if it is interest-free, it is not short of ethical consideration given potential abuses. And here I repeat my premise, men are men after all. This, of course, speaks to the ultimate objective of Islamic finance, which is to also serve the poor, beyond just giving lip service to that cause. In the developing countries where I served, I noted that microfinance, through Islamic finance principle, was quite effective in terms of risk sharing. I have to say the risk sharing probably applied more to men, because we know that women usually achieve a 98% repayment of loans under Islamic finance, while men always hovered around 75%. As I said, men are men. But one of the best targets for Islamic finance would be to mobilize dormant savings that are in the hands of people who do not wish to channel them through conventional loan facilities. And we all know, whether it's Islamic finance or non-Islamic finance, that unused capital is money lost. And I doubt that the Holy Quran recommends that, as no one benefits from dormant funds, and certainly not the poor. Again, people should realize that Islamic finance is not at all opposed to the development of capital markets, and I think we'll be talking about this today. And increasingly, people have come to terms with the notion of equity finance through financing through Islamic finance. While debt finance is acceptable in terms of delayed repayment of goods and services, derivatives. Now, derivatives, unless in the context of forward contracts, is considered exploitation by X of losses made by Z. And Ponzi schemes, not really fashionable in Islamic finance, thanks God. One of the greatest advantage of Islamic finance is that it tends to negate speculations and therefore enhances stability. And of course, deviations from the rules of the game in Islamic banking could lead to the same instability that comes from non-Islamic financial institutions. There is no doubt that Islamic finance limits the creativity of lawyers and financiers who create schemes at the margin on what I would call the legality-illegality continuum. So the fundamental question that one has to answer is really, on which side does one hedge his bet? Unfortunately, betting is also somewhat haram. Does Islamic finance offer the same flexibility as the conventional, or more properly, the non-Islamic financial system, assuming that the latter's flexibility respects the legal framework established by the financial authorities? That's the question. If not, is the stability provided by the Islamic financial system is enough compensation for the reduced flexibility? And that's the choice between flexibility and stability. And I think I already know Wall Street answers, and I will let you answer the question from your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our keynote speaker, Ferda Kokov. Can I please have you back to stage? Exactly, you can't just leave us. May I please kindly invite Mr. Ali Coşkun, former Minister of Industry and Trade, to the stage to present a plug of honor to Mr. Ferda Kokov. Thank you.
Too heavy, yeah.
Thank you very much. And our roundtable, as we mentioned before, Islamic finance and impact investing, collaboration to foster financial inclusion through inclusive business model. Our moderator is Melikşah Utkuz. The stage is yours.
Okay, all right, okay. To be the first session, everyone's interest is still up, but it gets a little bit of time, I think, to gather people around. But I think we're lucky in that sense that everyone will be listening to us. Let me first introduce myself. I'm Melikşah Utkuz, because I'm a replacement instead of Dr. Fahrettin Yakshi, who's the CEO of Al Baraka Turk, one of the participation banks in Turkey, and part of the Al Baraka banking group, which has 12 Islamic banks around the Middle East and North Africa and Pakistan. I am the CFO of Al Baraka Turk, and I'm also a board member in the Istanbul Stock Exchange. With that, let me introduce our panelists. We have with us Mr. Murat Ulu, who is the Group CFO, Group President of Financial Affairs in the Ağoğlu Group of companies. He has worked and has experience in different sectors, including financial sector, services. He has been on both the buying side and the acquisition side, so the selling side of privatization projects. And he is essentially, the group is essentially a construction company, but not limited to construction, of course. So he has a very wide range of experiences with regards to private sector, and will be able to provide us with his experiences on the social impact investment, and how private sector can help achieve that. Then we have Ms. Heather Grady. She is the Vice President of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. She has had a lot of huge experience. When I look at the CV, how could you fit all that in a lifetime? Huge experience in social services and philanthropy and impact investment in different areas, in different countries, and in different subjects also. So from social justice to economic development, to raising funds, to actually investing them. So I think that will provide us with how impact investment is done in the world, and I think she will be in a good position to give us a comparison of how Islamic finance can fit into this. And then we have Mr. Alberto, sorry for the pronunciation if I make it wrong, Burjnani, founder of, again, I'll only spell out the spelling, As-Saif, I assume, of an Italian consultancy group, which has wide experience in Islamic finance consultancy in Europe. She is ex-Merrill Lynch former director, and working in an environment, a fully developed financial environment, with regards to providing alternative schemes and modes of finance, is his experience, and I think he will be able to provide us with how how Islamic finance can actually provide with the view of developing the social aspects of countries. Then finally we have Ms. Jumaatun Azmi from Malaysia. She's the founder and president of Kasadia group of companies. I think it's safe to say that she is the trademark of halal establishments throughout the world. She has invested and brought up innovative ways of introducing a halal standard, which is by nature done by many Muslims, but there's no audit mechanisms usually, there are no assurances, there are no standards throughout the Islamic world. And she was a pioneer in this field of providing halal standards and assurances and audits into many sectors. And I think that retrospective, that perspective with regards to introducing this view will also help us with regards to how to bring this into impact investment. Without much further ado, let me start with Mr. Murat Ulu. Just a note, Mr. Murat will be speaking in Turkish, so you'll need to switch between headphones. Let me just ask you, start with a question. How do you think, given your experience, private sector could have an impact in impact investment, especially in developing countries like Turkey, Middle East, and North Africa? These are places all of which you have actually worked in.
Teşekkür ederim Sayın Bakanım, Başkanım ve sayın konuklar. Türkçe yapmayı tercih ettim konuşmayı İngilizce yerine. Çünkü ilk defa hani finans tecrübem oldukça uzun süredir finansın içindeyim. Hem banka tarafında hem reel sektör tarafında. Çok teknik konularda panellere katıldım, konuştum ama ilk defa işin sosyal tarafında konuşacağımız için işi İngilizceden değil Türkçe konuşmayı daha rahat hissettim kendime. İslami finans deyince herkesin kafasında belli fikirler var. Nedir İslami finans? Belli şartlara uyulması şartıyla belli fonların şirketlere aktarılması. Bunu yaparken işin tamamen yasal yönüyle yani şeriat kanunlarına uygun olan yönüyle yapılması düşünülüyor. Nedir bunlar? Çok basit olarak işte belli çeklerin atılması, işte alkolün finanse edilmemesi, keyif verici maddelerin sigaradır, alkoldür vesairenin finanse edilmemesi ve Kur'an-ı Kerim'de açıkça yazılmış yasakların ihlal edilmemesi. Ama İslami finans sadece bu mu olmalı? İşin sosyal yönü olmalı? Sadece mevcut kurulmuş neoklasik finansmanın içine İslam'ı sokmaya mı çalışmalıyız? Yoksa tam tersi bu finansmanı tamamen İslami koşullarda mı yapılandırmalıyız? Belki bunu konuşmak lazım. İşin sadece kâra yönelik kısmı yani klasik bankacılık, klasik finansmanda kârın maksimizasyonu mu olmalı? Yoksa İslami düşünceye göre işin sosyal yönü bireyden olayı çıkarıp topluma ve insanlığa mı yayma olmalı? Burada benim şahsi düşüncem ikincisi yani insanların ihtiyacı, İslami dünyanın ihtiyacına cevap verebilecek bir hale getirmek lazım İslami finansmanı. Finansmanı İslami finansın içine sokmaktansa içinden çıkarıp İslami görüşe göre hem sermayenin hem karın hem de yaratılan değerin paylaşılması olmalı. Bunun için çok güzel hani Arapçada bir terim var felah diye. Bu sadece şu anki iyi durumu, güzelliği, mutluluğu ya da gelişmeyi değil, aynı zamanda insani gelişmeyi ve sosyal yönü de içeren bir kavram. Hani felahı nerede rastlıyoruz? Sadece işin dediğim gibi şey kısmına bakmayacağım, finansmanına ve değer katılmasına bakacağım aynı zamanda. Bunu her zaman duyuyoruz. Günde 5 vakit namaza çağrılırken duyuyoruz. Namaza ve felaha davet ediliyor insanlar. Bu ne demek? Sadece işin şahsi yanını değil, toplumsal yanını da içine katmak demek. Namaza çağrılırken sadece bireysel olarak değil, toplumsal olarak da bir araya gelinmesi, birlikte hareket edilmesi düşünüldüğüne göre demek ki işi sadece bireysel düşünmemek lazım. Ne yazık ki şu anki İslami finans işin sadece kurallara uyma tarafını yerine getiriyor. Bunun yerine ama bütün kapsayıcı bir şekilde olması ve değerlendirilmesi daha düzgün olmalı düşüncesindeyim. Bu nedir? İşin sosyale ve topluma ve tüm bireylere yayılması olmalı. Bunun içinde işte zekat mekanizması da olabilir, sadaka mekanizması da olabilir veya diğer kuralların da içinde olacağı bir mekanizma olabilir. Bunda nasıl topluma yayarsınız ya da sermayenin paylaşılması nasıl topluma yayarsınız? Daha emek yoğun, daha insanların paylaşımcı olduğu ekonomilerle ancak mümkün olabilir. Bunu özel sektöre getirdiğim zaman ben örneği kendi sektörümden vereceğim, gayrimenkul sektöründen vereceğim. Sektöre bakarsınız aslında yüzyıllardır, belki binlerce yıldır aynı şeyi veriyor. Dört duvar bir hizmet veriyor. Yarattığı ürün dört duvar. Ama insanın temel ihtiyaçlarından barın ve hani karnını doyurma, yaşamasını idame ettirmesi için gereken bir sektör. Değişen bir şey yok. Gene çok emek yoğun bir sektör. Hem temel ihtiyaçları karşılıyor, hem emek yoğun olduğu için çalışan sayısı ve aslında oradan katma değerden faydalanan insan sayısının çok fazla olduğu bir sektör. Bir ikincisi, geçen gün Sayın Şimşek'in bakanımızın da bir demecinde belirttiği gibi getirilerin de yüksek olduğu bir sektör. Bunu tabana nasıl yayabiliriz? Bunun katma değerinden nasıl faydalanılabilir? İslami taraftan düşündüğüm zaman bunun topluma yayılması için insanların bunu katılabileceği, dahil olabileceği şekilde düşünmek lazım. Nedir bunlar? Hoş şu an yeni Türkiye özelinde düşündüğüm zaman yeni gayrimenkul yatırım fonları tanıtılmaya çalışıyor ama şu an için ne yazık ki sadece nitelikçi yatırımcıya, yani bunlar kimlerdir? Ya serveti yüksek olan yatırımcı ya da kurumsal yatırımcıya müsaade edecek şekilde yapılıyor. Halbuki bunun tabana daha çok yayılarak buradan normalde bir ev alamayacak insanın bu gayrimenkulü menkulleştirilmesiyle parça parça olarak biriktirerek de ev almasını sağlayacak bir yapı oluşturulabilir. O yüzden İslami finans terimi de aslında ters. İslam belki ekonomi olarak düşünmek lazım. Çok büyük bir ekonomi, yani milyarlarca Müslüman yaşıyor dünya üstünde. Güzel bir örneği ve hatta şuradan belki bağlamak daha düzgün olur. Hani pazarlamanın en önemli, en temel tanımıdır. Pazarlama insanların ihtiyacının giderilmesidir. O zaman İslam dünyasının ihtiyaçları nedir diye düşünerek hareket edersek, hani İslami finansa uydurmaktan ziyade İslam dünyasının ihtiyacı ne diye düşünürsek belki daha rahat bir şey yaratabiliriz. Malezya'da yaratılan mesela hac fonu gibi 2012 sonunda toplam 12 milyar dolar büyüklüğe erişmiş bir fon. Bunun amacı ne? Hacca gitmek isteyen Müslümanların bunu kaldırabilecek finansal duruma ya da maddi duruma gelmeleri için yaratılmış bir fon. Demek ki böyle bir ihtiyaç var. Yani sırf Malezya'da 9-10 milyon Müslüman hacca gitmek için 12 milyar dolarlık bir birikimi bir araya getirebiliyorlar. Tahminim bu 200 sene öncesinin rakamı belki 14-15 milyar dolara gelmiş bir rakam. Demek ki ihtiyaç üstünden ve İslami düşünce üstünden hareket edersek hani İslami finansa uydurmaktan ziyade finansı İslam'a uydurmak daha doğru olacak diye düşünüyorum. Şimdilik bunları kapatıyorum sözümü.
Çok teşekkürler. Thank you very much. Heather, you've had experience, philanthropic experience, and in many different geographies, including Muslim countries. And a major portion of those projects is funding, actually, and financial inclusion. Unless you're just spending, you want people to produce rather than just consume. You had experience in other systems, in the conventional systems, and presumably you've seen the lack of financial inclusion in Islamic countries. One of the reasons of which is the aversion of Muslims in interest-related products or interest-related functions. How do you see Islamic finance or alternative modes of both generating funds and investing them, and your experience as a philanthropist, and an organizer and investor in such projects, especially related with regards to impact investing. If you can share your thoughts on that, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to start by thanking Marcos Nito and UNDP for inviting me here today, and I'm very excited to learn from my distinguished panelists as well. I've actually been interested in this topic since the 1980s when I worked with Save the Children in Sudan. I had the responsibility of starting a microfinance program there, and at that time, programs had really taken off, for example, in Bangladesh, led by Muhammad Yunus and Fazal Abed. So the question was how to do this in a country like Sudan. There, with its legal system and culture, we had to find a different way of doing microfinance, and we created something called group guaranteed lending. And that was based both on Islamic practice and on traditional African rotating credit societies like Tontine, as they have it in West Africa. What was interesting is, as the keynote speaker said, there were very high repayment rates lending to both women and men, and it was very sustainable. Now, after that, I moved on to many other countries and different organizations, and in the last decade, I've been working a lot on this area called impact investing as a part of our philanthropy work. And more recently, I've been working on a platform called the Sustainable Development Goals Philanthropy Platform, the SDGs Philanthropy Platform, with UNDP and the Foundation Center. Something that we have found in doing this, if you do the analysis of how we're going to reach the SDGs by 2030, of course they launch in just 3 weeks, we can never achieve those goals unless we retailer our financing globally. It's estimated that achieving those goals will cost about $4 trillion per year at a minimum. Now, governments and philanthropy can only do a small part of that. So what has to happen instead is really a shifting of how business operates to bring social and environmental goals into core business operations and to mobilize much more social finance. The bank BNY Mellon has estimated that the amount of social finance in the world today is about $22 trillion. And of that, impact investing is a relatively small share, but it's growing. And we know that Islamic finance is growing. So if these two areas, Islamic finance and impact investing, have some similarities, is there any way that we could really build the bridges and collaboration between them? First, just looking at what are some of the commonalities that could underpin more collaboration. First, values and principles have to be aligned. And in both cases, in theory at least, you have to place principle-based limits on the profit motive. Secondly, impact investing goes beyond exclusionary screening in areas like tobacco and alcohol and firearms, which is intentional investing into social purpose businesses and can provide debt or equity investment. And of course, Islamic finance too starts with the do no harm principle, but really goes beyond that, again, at least in theory, to make sure that the finance is not excessively or wastefully using resources, and that it's not harming the physical or social environment of society. So really, the values are very aligned in both of these fields. Third, in both of them, there's increasing attention to spending investment to promote environmental sustainability, to create jobs, and to work in poorer countries. So I think they're both quite relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, both sectors are working with some of the conventional finance leads, the biggest banks in the world, but they're not coordinating at all right now. What are some of the barriers to collaboration? Well, one is both of these sectors are a bit preoccupied with their own growth and their own standards of measurement, and the communities just simply aren't interacting much. Secondly, they tend to be in different countries of concentration, whether the investors or the investments. And third, I think Islamic finance's emphasis on financing structure due to the prohibitions against profit makes the deal-making more complex, and impact investors may find this just an area they don't really understand. And there are other barriers, including cultural, but let me switch to move to some solutions. How could we really build collaboration between these two different fields and communities? First of all, I think it would be interesting to do some studies of past investments, what has worked or not. Do these studies together. I was reading about the Sustainable Resources Fund that was launched in 2012. That was actually designed to service both Islamic finance and the so-called green banks, designed around agroforestry, land, and sustainable agriculture sectors. So that might be an interesting case to study. Second, I think that business schools and professional courses that are focused on one or the other could really just take a bit of curriculum time to introduce the other concepts so that people begin to see some of the overlaps. A third area would be when we think about industry conferences and reports. These are certainly increasingly common for impact investing. They could include both of these communities and concepts about both of them. Fourth, I think it's been suggested that practitioners in Islamic finance, actually you just said it, to focus more on social purpose and really go farther in that direction. I think that that's, again, it's something as the field of impact investing grows, I think both communities could work on that together. Another idea is there's a lot of exchange of information, a lot of inventorying right now. If you look at some of the organizations in the US that are working on impact investing, we're building a growing list, the Global Impact Investing Network, Mission Investors Exchange, a group called Tonic based out of California, just a really increasing number of groups that are involved in this area. I really think that it never includes Islamic finance, or very, very rarely. So it's just left out of the inventory. I think that both groups are, in Islamic finance, there's a really interesting conversation about how to make sure that women are being included more, and I think, again, that would be an area for both groups to talk about together. And I think we really have to overcome preconceptions and bias. I think leaders in impact investing really don't know much in general about the about the Islamic world, probably haven't interacted much at conferences, and I think we really could do a lot to overcome that. I'm very pleased at this topic at this conference, but I don't see it too often in the world of impact investing. And finally, I think an area of common interest is risk management. There's a hot debate in the impact investor community today about risk, particularly from the field of philanthropy. A lot of people say philanthropy needs to be the sector that takes risk. Mainstream investors and banks may not want to. Now, the whole concept in Islamic finance of moving from risk, not shifting risk, but sharing risk, has been developed over centuries. And so the very idea that there's a whole community that's working on this that could have something to offer impact investors, I think is very important. I would say as well, I think it's important to share some humility between the two groups. I find a lot of impact investors, there's a lot of hype, I might say. People say, this is amazing, it's changing the world, but in reality, it's still quite a small part of total finance in the world. And I think there's probably some of that as well in the world of Islamic finance. Really making sure that we're recognizing both where we need to improve and as well as our accomplishments. I think I would just end by saying today, in our world today, these are trying times for building bridges between cultures and between religions and between communities. The last month has proved as trying as any time recently, and the last year or two has been difficult. I think it's a fascinating undertaking to say that could those of us working on using finance for social purpose create one of those bridges? Are there ways that we could really delve into this more? So I think I really commend the organizers for thinking about linking these topics at this conference, and I hope that all of us on this panel can be a part of building those bridges in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alberto, now you had experience in a financially developed world with regards to an alternative financing mode. And as you know, Islamic finance especially lacks the kind of product suite, range of products that conventional banking has. Given that, And given your experience in providing this kind of finance in Europe and in other areas, how do you think Islamic finance can move forwards with regards to developing products, especially geared towards impact investment in Europe, in the developed world, and also in the developing countries?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you for this question. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just make a few comments on the very interesting topic of the previous panelist from the Rockefeller Foundation. Islamic finance and bridges. Let me share a few thoughts with you. Few people know that Islamic finance almost started in the US. In September 1986, at that time I was a director of Merrill Lynch, a major conference on Islamic finance was held in Washington, D.C. at the Madison Hotel, just in front, still there, in front of the White House. And who was the organizer of this conference? That was attended by the General Counsel of the World Bank, Ibrahim Shihata, was attended by Ahmadinejad, the founding father of Islamic banking. The sponsor, the main sponsor, was the State Department. And it was a very successful, well-attended conference, and all people at the State Department were very much supportive and excited about Islamic finance, September 1986. So just to tell you some things. The municipality of Seattle, the capital city of Washington State, just a few months ago, has launched a major Islamic finance project to raise finance for municipality. Washington State, not Washington, D.C., to raise finance for the municipality, building roads, whatever, through Islamic finance. The most effective, most successful company that provides home financing, Sharia compliant, is in Virginia. In the world, is in Virginia. Across the Potomac, it's called Guidance, and they've been refinancing their lending through Ginnie Mae's, through the Ginnie Mae's market. Last but not least, one of the great Islamic banks is in Texas. It's called La Riba. Very, very known and very effective. So when we talk about Islamic finance and the West and the US and the unfortunate comments of 2 days ago of Mr. Trump, we should also put things into perspective and know that there is a lot of things that they're not shared by the medias. I'm heading actually the Scientific Advisory Committee of the World Congress of Muslim Philanthropists. And in the World Congress of Muslim Philanthropists, major US foundations are there, Bill Gates Foundation, for example. And by the way, the World Council of Muslim Philanthropists will gather next year here in Istanbul. And everybody's welcome to attend this event. Major players in Islamic finance are US banks. Myself, I made the maiden Islamic finance deal in Russia, and the book runner was Citibank Islamic from Dubai, Citibank. So I'm just sharing this thought with you to show you that the Islamic finance tenants are already very much entrenched into the Western system. But why so? Is Islamic finance Islamic? I don't think so. I've been in Islamic finance from the late 80s, actually. the tenets of Islamic finance have been the normal way of conducting business in the world since the very inception of history. What we know now in the last 25, 30 years, not more, which is the financialization of the economy, is the exception, is not the rule. So one of the reasons why Islamic finance is so successful in the world is that it brings back memories in people, and certainly it strikes a chord in the hearts of many people, because this is a part of our heritage in the world. Is Islamic finance for Muslims? Not at all. The largest retail Islamic bank in the UK, Islamic Bank of Britain, renamed down Al Rayyan Banks, has 80% of its clients, 80% in the UK, that are not Muslim. They're not Muslims, you know? The most developed system in the world is Malaysia, of course, where about 25% of the Malaysian assets are Sharia compliant. There as well, the greatest clients of the system there are Chinese and Indians that do not belong to the Islamic, to the Muslim faith. They don't adhere to the Muslim faith. Those things, just to share with you the idea that Islamic finance is not stranger, has been there and is here and is developing for these reasons. With regard with impact investing and fighting poverty, the story is quite different. It's not a pink and rosy picture in Islamic finance. Islamic finance has a great success story nowadays for the rich people, for structuring, for real estate, certainly, for infrastructure. Infrastructure is important, IPP structure, these sort of things. But when you come down the ladder, the social ladder, Islamic finance is pretty much absent. And the great debate nowadays in the Islamic finance fraternity or sorority is that we must move from 1.0 to 2.0 because there is a dichotomy, actually, between the aspiration of Islamic finance that are based on Quran al-Karim and Hadith, and the realities. The Ummah, the Islamic, the Muslim community, has three peculiarities that are not shared by other communities in the world. The first one is that most of the members of the Ummah are very poor. 600 million of them are living below the poverty line. Those are numbers. Secondly, Ummah is home to the richest people of the world. Go to Riyadh and you will count money by billions of US dollars, not millions. And this is known. The richest people in the world nowadays are sitting in the Gulf. Very curiously, we do have in Islam equalization tools like zakat and sadaqah, like qard hasan, that are not put to contributions to bridge this gap. So nowadays, to have a real impact on Islamic finance, by Islamic finance in the poverty alleviation policies, we need a comprehensive policy. We need to use instruments for sharing risk, like mudaraba and musharaka. At the same time, we need a very, by the Sharia scholars, a very proactive understanding of the meaning of zakat. We know Muslims, we know that zakat in the Quran al-Karim is only for 8 categories of people. This is Quran, it's not debatable. But those 8 categories do not prevent the use of zakat for at least a few things. I name 3 things, capacity building, and capacity building inside a strategy is a key, is very important. For administration costs, another key issue in those projects, and for paying the premium of micro-takaful, micro-insurance, Sharia-compliant way, micro-takaful policies. You cannot have microfinance or micro-equity, as I prefer to call it, without the wrapping of takaful. So a combined use of those instruments, Islamic model financing, musharaka, mudaraba, salam for agriculture, the equalization tools already existing, zakat, sadaqat, qard hasan, has certainly the possibility of blazing the trail, of opening really new environments, new avenues in fighting this poverty. Let me remind you that the great amount of money sitting idle, which is in Islam is haram. Remember that is absolutely hoarding in Islam is haram. You cannot hoard money. Money must be used, full stop. It's not an issue in Islam. The trillion of dollars hidden are in waqf. Waqf are not used. Endowments, trust. Actually, trust came to England, was brought to England by Richard the Lionheart coming back from the Crusade and brought this strange thing of waqf, and it moved into English and Manhattan, common law, whatever, as trust. We have an enormous amount of money, trillions of dollars, that are just lying idle. Now we have an improvement there because this concept of cash waqf is moving forward, and we can use cash waqf to fund those projects. So it's a very complex picture in Islamic finance and impact investing. Alhamdulillah, Islamic finance is a success story for the haves. For the have-not, it's not a success story. It's highly debatable. We have, is my last sentence, some really big improvement. We've been working with my company. Basically, we are the oldest Islamic finance consultants in Europe, and we work a lot in Afghanistan, in Palestine, in the Sudan, in Russia. And Sudan, we have now, I want to share this last information with you guys, a Bank of Khartoum who has launched a very interesting, launched 2 years ago, a very successful project on, they call it Islamic microfinance, actually it's Islamic microequity, using Mudaraba, one of the mode of Islamic mode of financing. The very interesting thing is that they have a 33 million US dollars fund, and 25% of this fund is funded by the Sudanese Zakat umbrella organizations. So we already have some Zakat money that is free money, actually, that is flowing into something that is not to give a fish to the poor, but give him the tool to fish the things. So the avenues are there. We know what we have to do. We must do it. And certainly, Islamic finance, impact investing, is an area where we absolutely, I mean the Western world, if it makes any sense to say Western world or Eastern world, I mean the worlds must have to come together and sit together and certainly come to the same conferences to build a common policy. My last sentence is a hadith of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, that said that poverty can bring a human being to this belief. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alberto. Jumaatun, you come from the private sector, but you have closely worked with the government agencies, bureaucracy, in order to establish a standard that has its roots in Islamic religion, the jurisdiction, and was able to include that in, as a government approach, as a standard, with its audit procedures, with its assurances, a whole systematic way into the life of Malaysians and worldwide. Now, given that experience, how do you propose businesses establish themselves as impact investors? How can governments support them? How is their relation with the government should be, especially taking into account Islamic finance is not just the business of Islamic banks. Islamic finance is the business of all Islamic businesses, actually. So taking into account, how do you have a proposition with regards to the governments and the businesses working together? It might not just be governments, but donors as well, international organizations. We'll like to hear those.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin, I would like to thank you, the organizers, for inviting me to Istanbul again. I'm very happy to be here, and we have an excellent and very timely theme for the crisis time I feel that we're living in today. But before I get to the question, I would like to do a little bit of comment. I think, Ms. Heather, I think the key thing between what you said is actually true. I see a lot of similarities and the aligned values between impact investing and Islamic values. And I think this brings us to a big opportunity, actually, to tackle the world issues together from the Islamic finance or the Islamic side, as well as impact investing. And I think various programs can be done. And I'm doing this on my own in Malaysia. I would like to collaborate in actually coming up with programs to actually bring different stakeholders together for the same purpose. Back to the question of how we can support inclusive business models for impact investing. I think the main opportunity we have right now is actually to look at sustainability with the word Islam and finance in the picture. So when we bring in the idea of Islamic finance into the picture of how to create inclusive business models in low-income Muslim majority countries, which is a theme of our panel, is like we need to actually go back and look at the nature of money, because the nature of money is an important factor, I believe, in achieving sustainability, which is the key thing that we are trying to do in the UNDP's SDGs. Islamic finance links to real economy, and it, as the fellow panelists have said, it can bring a lot of benefits to the world. But it will be good if the players in the Islamic finance and in this whole ecosystem can go back to the base of it, the issue of money, the fact that money must also be real, so that transactions are fair from the beginning. Otherwise, the one who uses money on its first use gets an unfair benefit. And the measure of value of money also must be real. And financial inclusion is necessary to fight poverty, but it's going to be really hard to do in this present fiat money interest-based system, because we feel the system itself creates poverty and the widening gap in wealth distribution. So I feel that more discussions need to continue on this concept of money, but when we look at what we're talking about today in terms of how to bring Islamic money into the low income, if it's a problem, then we should ask the question, do we need money to do business? And I think if we look at the meaning, the values of Islam, and we bring this into our topic right now, it actually opens up a new avenues altogether, new ways of thinking in terms of coming up with a paradigm of economic justice, stability, and sustainability. So when we look at these areas, there is an opportunity now in times of crisis, and that's why we are here, to try to figure out how to collaborate, to possibly come up with new systems that might not have the word Islamic in it, but they are Islamic in nature. Some of the things have actually been mentioned earlier, but we see now around the world people coming up with new solutions like a good electronic-based Islamic microfinance can assist in the matter, because there are there's going to be more places in the world that you're going to have harder time to create infrastructure and clean water, but they have access to mobile phones. We can use this technology to actually bring in Islamic-based microfinance for the poor community, and actually possibility bypass money altogether until that particular problem resolves itself. And there are groups right now that are creating new systems like netting systems, that we have a commercial credit circuit where we create an ecosystem, and the buyers and suppliers and governments can be in the system, and we can actually do our transactions within each other electronically based without money. And I think these are the new kind of system that we need to think about. We need to think outside of the box on how to deal with social impact businesses in low-income communities in an Islamic way, which is essentially a focus on economic justice and sustainability and stability. And there are Sharia-conforming credit card systems that uses netting. These are an opportunity that arises when we actually look at the problems we have now from the Islamic point of view. So I hope that the Islamic finance players can also broaden up the discussion and actually think of ways that is not conventional, because I feel in the kind of problems we have in the world right now, we can't use the same kind of thinking that brought us here in the first place. We have to think outside the box. And there are other models that the Waqf and the Zakat is actually the way to go. In Malaysia, there is a big changes within the government where they are looking at Waqf land and cash Waqf, when we have billions and billions of land and, sitting idle. And as Mr. Brunoni said, with money, in Islam, it needs to be circulated. Wealth needs to be circulated. We need to use money. So it's very encouraging that there is new spirit of reviving some of these old, not old, but we have these actually Islamic concepts in terms of finance that has been used, but it needs to be pushed forward again. It needs to be created a robust system around it, a transparent system, and overreaching system that can actually help in terms of inclusive growth for wealth for everybody. And I think the key thing that we need to look at, is actually Islamic finance or impact investing. The key thing is actually all the different stakeholders need to work together to create systems and programs that actually is in line with the maqasid of Sharia, which is the purpose of Sharia. And eventually, we all have the same goals. It's actually to create financial systems that bring about economic justice and sustainability and stability. And I think this kind of platforms must go on, and it must have different stakeholders, and inshallah, we may be able to achieve these visions that we have for the goals in the next 15 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we have time to have a few questions from the ground. We have time, right? 5 minutes. 5 minutes time. Any questions from? Yes. If there is a moving microphone, if we can direct it there.
Good morning. Thank you for the panelists. In my opinion, there's nothing called Islamic financing. The word Islamic, it's a commodity being used to market the financing. If we look at the principle of Islamic financing, what's called Islamic financing, they are the same principle of commercial, the traditional financing system. A couple of points in Islamic financing, which is really risk sharing. In most of the Islamic financial dealings, we don't have risk sharing. I'm a businessman. I've been involved in getting Islamic financing and traditional financing. There's no risk sharing into this one. It is purely a build-up of profits on top of profits. This commodity, I think, it should not be abused as a marketing tool. Yes, in Sharia, we have a couple of points, which is the zakat, the sadaqah, all these things to be used. We are not using it properly. There's the waqf, which is not being used properly, but everything else, it's a normal business tradition. And as Mr. Roberto says, today the financial system is helping the rich to be richer, and the poor, they are getting no benefit. Literally, this our Islamic financial system is an integration of the traditional financial system of the world. Due to the fact of the financial crisis of the world, we had more control, which is to be used for international financing, rather than creating some sort of a racist word of Islamic and then, getting it. It's a good benefit for us, but there's nothing called Islamic financing as much as it's a normal financial, but we're abusing it to take the money of the poorer, putting it in the bank, taking advantage of them, and then giving the money to the richer people. I hope we can develop a proper system, Islamic financial system, which really serves the humanity and serves the world, and that's what all Islam is about, serving humanity, not the richer and then getting the poor poorer. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't hear a question there, but no problem. If anyone wants to answer or reply, I'm a moderator, so I won't be answering that question. Any more questions? Okay, I think I'll just wrap up then. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to hear from different sides of impact investment and Islamic finance and business. Let me just also provide you some takes that I got from here. First of all, there definitely is room for improvement with regards to establishing Islamic finance. And like Mr. Keynote speaker said, Islamic finance is not just about Islamic banks. To become more socially responsible, to become more engaged in impact investment, definitely there is room for developing new products. But the government and the international bodies has to be there, because most of the time it is regulations, tax regulations, banking regulations, and other regulations that actually prevent banks and other businesses to properly utilize these products like zakat, like Qarz Hasan. For example, Qarz Hasan by itself has tax implications that banks cannot use directly. So there's definitely room for collaboration between governments and businesses there. In Ottoman times, waqfs were used to privately finance infrastructure and all the social responsibilities that we normally attribute nowadays to governments. So I think waqf is an important establishment that can easily be used by both banks, governments, and also the private sector businesses worldwide. And Islamic finance, I think if the principles are utilized directly, need not be Islamic. It could be utilized anywhere around the world, in the US, in Europe, in China. It doesn't matter. As long as these principles and financing modes are utilized, especially with regards to providing impact investment, I think it will boost this mode of finance into its normal or proper direction, and also allow it to grow worldwide. With that, I thank you all for your participation and valuable insights, and for the listeners for having listened to us patiently and provided also insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our speakers and our moderator. May I please now kindly invite Mr. Durmuş Yılmaz, former governor of the Central Bank of Republic of Turkey, to present the plug of honor to our speakers and our moderators. Aşkım. Çabuk çabuk hepsini getirin. Murat. İsimlere bak ama. Murat Bey. Tamam, aşağıya inelim. Okay. Sana veriyorum hayatım, ben direkt öğretmenim. Thank you very much to our speakers and our moderator and Mr. Durmuş Yılmaz.